What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and China's pretty ticked off here as we've just met with the Taiwanese president and Speaker Kevin McCarthy here. Also, you can see here China just retaliates against the Taiwanese president's visit to the U.S. and sanctions the Reagan Library and think tank and slaps the U.S. with sanctions. And so this is just the first move here by China. The US is pushing China to a red line, and companies that do business in the country may need to come up with a plan B. A Yale economist says, in case we're no longer able to do business with China. We'll get to that here in a minute. Here's what House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has to say after meeting with the Taiwan president.
Today, China is condemning House Speaker Kevin McCarthy for hosting the president of Taiwan at the Reagan Library here in Southern California. That's predictable. China is saying that the U.S. is now moving down a wrong and dangerous road. But China is now facing a rare united front from Democrats and Republicans. It's unusual in today's politics. Speaker McCarthy even drew immediate praise from his predecessor, Nancy Pelosi, despite their past conflicts, for the bipartisan show of force in support of Taiwan, a self-governing island that China claims as its territory. I spoke to the speaker after the meetings about what was gained about forging a bipartisan approach to this increasingly aggressive stance from China, especially over Taiwan. What was the importance of this meeting today? It was bipartisan. It was very unusual.
I think that is one of the greatest importance, that you're finding that I think one of our greatest challenges with Taiwan and with China in the future is never speaking with one voice. When I became speaker, one of the first things I set out to do is create a bipartisan committee. We created a new select committee. You've watched here sitting on a Ronald Reagan Library, Republicans and Democrats together, the Speaker for the very first time of the House of Representatives sitting down with the President of Taiwan and having a discussion to foster peace for the future. And I think it really goes with the philosophy of Reagan. You've watched in a House be very divided, united on this issue. We want to make sure that the world continues to foster peace, freedom, and democracy. So what can we do now as policymakers to make that world better? Speed up arms sales to Taiwan, foster greater economy, be it technology, medicines, and others, and foster that bond for democracy and freedom. I think that will create, one place is have a more united front with China, but for the world itself, learn the lessons from Ukraine so we're not back here in another country a few years from now.
Now, NBC reported exclusively this week that China did collect information, intelligence, sensitive intelligence, by circling, doing figure eights over sensitive military sites. Contrary to what the U.S. was saying, what the administration was saying.
That's very disturbing. I mean, the one thing you have to understand, too, is never should they have been able to go through our airspace. And a balloon is almost like a drone. It's hovering. We know when a satellite comes over, we can cover up. But the idea that they were trying to collect, it shows how dangerous the world is for the future. And this is why it's more important than ever that Republicans and Democrats speak with one voice. When that balloon came over, you watched the action of the House. Every single member of the House, be it Republican and Democrat, voted together on a resolution denouncing the CCP for that action itself and what they were sending that knowledge back to China. So I think you're going to see the Gang of Eight take actions and maybe the House take actions based upon further information we gather.
The Gang of Eight being the top leaders who all get the intelligence. Do you worry that meeting with President Tsai in the United States is going to further escalate the tensions?
No, it shouldn't by any means. I mean, I would sit down with President Xi. Macron is sitting down with President Xi. What I think would foster a worse situation is a lack of communication. What China should look at today is that Republicans and Democrats are united. What we're looking at today is making sure the rhetoric doesn't get higher. We're looking at how can we deter that war does not happen, right? Peace through strength. So there's actions we can take looking back what happened in Ukraine. So 5 years from now, we're not in the same place that Ukraine is today. And the democracy is fostered greater and strength and freedom.
At the same time, what would you do about a potential invasion? U.S. intelligence estimates, according to congressional testimony just last month, that within 5 years, China is going to try to take over Taiwan.
You know, it's so interesting. It was 7 years ago I went to the White House and met with President Biden advocating that they sell javelins to Ukraine so Russia would not invade. It's defensive weapons to stop the tanks. I wonder if that decision had been made then, would Russia never invade? So if you're talking it's 5 years from now, it's important that we're taking this meeting now. How can we speed up the weapon sales, which go just with what Reagan said on the Sixth Assurance, keeps our three communicades, our relationship with China, and deters someone thinking from a authoritarian view that they can enter another country and that they can defend themselves and we can stand for freedom. So the world is a safer place. That's why it's so important. And your question earlier today, where I watched you ask that question standing behind the Berlin Wall, knowing you were there, think of that moment when there were two Germanys and the stance that America took in Reagan and how the world is safer and Germany is united today. What we're doing today is protecting us 5 years from now if we take those actions.
With all due respect, though, didn't President Trump undermine the U.S. posture towards Ukraine because of his support for Vladimir Putin?
I don't know where the president on that. The one thing I will say, what I see happening in the world today looks a lot like the 1930s. You have something different changing. You have China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran coming together like an axis of power of the old days of Germany, Italy, and Japan. And when you think back and study history, if the lawmakers do nothing, what transpires? That's why today you're watching lawmakers, something you don't see in Washington very often, come together united. You watched Republicans and Democrats not standing on each other's side, but standing together, speaking together, and now we're going to work together to make sure tomorrow will be safer.
Yeah, so interesting points there. Kevin McCarthy said we should speed up arms sales to Taiwan so that they can protect themselves from an invasion from China. Remember, we have the Taiwan Relation Acts as well, previous act passed by Congress that we should help protect Taiwan. And he also mentions there, interesting point, that several years ago, that we should have sold javelins to Ukraine so that Ukraine could have helped protect themselves from an invasion from Russia years ago. Interesting point of view there. But you didn't know that. I wasn't aware that he had mentioned that previously years ago as well. Interesting. Yeah, so a lot of points there. And China not very happy about this. Of course, if we speed up arms sales to Taiwan, that would further piss off China even more. Will that deter China from invading Taiwan? U.S. intelligence has said, you heard them mention it there, that they see China invading Taiwan within 5 years. President Biden has said publicly a couple times that the U.S. would. In fact, I'll just show you here so you can see it. Take a listen to this.
Well, President Biden is making clear just how far he'd go to defend Taiwan in an attack from China. In fact, in an interview that aired last night on CBS's 60 Minutes, Biden took his pledge to defend the island one step further. Take a listen.
To be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
Definitive.
And President Biden has actually reiterated that multiple times. And he says that this is a long-standing U.S. policy going all the way back to when Congress passed the U.S.-Taiwan Relations Act. So, yeah. Now, remember, China's what I would call one part of the three-headed dragon. They have 1.4 billion people. We have about 330 million people, so they're like 4 times the size of our country. Of course, they have nuclear weapons as well. So does Russia. So does North Korea. And all 3 of those countries threatening us on a daily basis. Yeah. So, where do we go from here? It's like we have threats here on a daily basis. In fact, I'll link you to a video here where we just got nuclear threats And you can see it here in this next video that you should watch here next. So if you haven't yet, make sure to click the subscribe button and then the bell icon so you don't miss out on new videos here on our YouTube channel. It's completely free to do so. New videos come out here every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'll keep you up to date here. Also, thanks for liking and sharing these videos. Here's some videos you should watch next. Here's that video of Americans getting a nuclear threat here. Very good video here. Or the US government is actually banning some of your household items. And you can click here to watch that video. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.